Warning, listener discretion is advised. That's it. Joe Biden is officially re-invited to the cookout. He's like invited to the cookout squared. Hey, what's up, you guys? If you've been living under a rock, I would like to inform you that Joe Biden has finally chosen a running mate, and it has to be one of the most important vice presidential nominees in modern history. Let me explain why. That's right, I said it. This entire episode is going to be a Let Me Explain segment. But first, let me pay some bills real quick. And we're back. Now, normally I do the entire, intro, this is what we're going to talk about today kind of situation. But I don't have time for the pleasantries, because this isn't a normal episode today. This isn't a scheduled Monday episode. I promised you guys that I would be doing new content, new podcast episodes every Monday, and today's Thursday. I decided yesterday's news was too big not to share with you guys. Now, if you've been living under a rock, Joe Biden is the Democrat running against Donald Trump in 2020. Joe Biden was Barack Obama's vice president, and if he looks familiar to you, there were viral memes in 2016 that completely surrounded Obama and Biden's bromance. I have shared a few of them on my Facebook page. If you haven't liked that page, well, shame on you. Now, I'm going to do a Joe Biden episode later on, but I do want to explain my earlier statement that his VP pick is one of the most important in modern history. Because it is, and it all boils down to him being old. Now, I'm sorry. I like the feller. I'm voting for the feller. But it's true. He's old. When he is elected president, and yes, I said when he is elected president, he will be the oldest elected president in our nation's history. And that is where his VP comes in. On day one, Biden will already be a crisp 78 years old, and that is significant. We all know that the presidency takes a huge toll on a man. If you look at before and after photos online of Bush, Sr., Jr., Clinton, Obama, it is no secret that the presidency ages the holder of that office tremendously. And the weight of the entire world on your shoulders was not meant for one man alone to bear. And Biden will be lucky to make it through his entire term. Knock on wood. Sorry, dude. And he's already made it clear that if he's elected, he'll only serve one term and he won't run for a second term. So, Joe Biden's vice presidential nomination all but sets the identity of our next president in stone. The daughter of a Jamaican immigrant father and a South Indian immigrant mother, Kamala Harris. Kamala was born during the Civil Rights Movement in Oakland, California on October 20th in 1964. And that makes her a natural-born citizen and older than 35, which 100% meet the requirements to be President of the United States. So they more than qualify you to be the Vice President of the United States. So do not let anyone fool you. There is a false propagandized social media post going around that Kamala is an anchor baby, and because she's an anchor baby and both of her parents are immigrants, for whatever reason, she can't serve as president if something happens to Joe. So in the event something does happen to Joe, Kamala doesn't become the president, the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, does, and that's 100% sticky gator shit. Kamala was born here. The citizen status of her parents has no bearing on her ability to be vice president or president. There are 3 constitutional clauses that dictate what qualifies you to be vice president or president, and none of them have anything to say about the status of your parents upon arrival. This so-called anchor baby thing is really just a dog whistle to the conservative right. It's some BS. They can't call her stupid because she's a doctor of law, and she has 2 doctorate degrees, although they're honorary. Honorary degrees are still earned in a way, not by academic study, but in her actions as a public official. If anything, her being the first-generation American child of 2 immigrants gives her a unique perspective that I think could help out, considering we have a shit ton of immigration issues on the horizon that need to be fixed. And I trust this woman to get it taken care of. It's one of the reasons I originally supported her during the Democratic primary. And it is because even when Joe got in, I didn't feel that Joe automatically deserved my support simply because he was the vice president to my favorite president of my lifetime so far, Barack Obama. I didn't think that it personally meant that he automatically got my vote. I supported Kamala. And it's because we'll get there. Anyway, she was raised by a single mother upon her parents' separation, and she credits her mother for raising her to become the woman that she is today, instilling in her that hard work, dedication, and action were the most important virtues that a person can have. And that's true. This is one of the reasons why I originally supported her. Anyway, she would go on to graduate from Howard University, which is a historical black college, and then go on to law school. And as a member of the California Bar, she rose amongst the ranks from prosecutor to becoming the first female DA in San Francisco and the first DA of color in all of California. And then she would later run to be the Attorney General of the state of California, where she championed LGBT rights by going after Prop 8. And if you don't know what Prop 8 is, it's okay, we'll talk about it later. As well as supporting women's rights and stressing the necessity for education by pushing a controversial anti-truancy initiative, which is similar to what we have in the great old state of Texas. But in California, the idea that you could go to jail for not taking personal responsibility to make sure that your child is in school learning is just out of this fucking world. So obviously, people in California aren't really going to like her for that, but they need to get the fuck over it. We're used to that in Texas. Fucking send your kids to school. What's so hard? She also worked to reform the broken criminal justice system in California by being the first state attorney general to require that all police officers have body cams on their person at all times. And although she was a tough on-crime prosecutor and attorney general, she created initiatives all over the place to help nonviolent first-time offenders get to court, plead guilty, and then find resources for charge deferment to get better jobs, better educational opportunities, in order to help turn their lives around and raise them from the circumstances that caused them to deviate from the social contract of lawfulness in the first damn place. If I'm not mistaken, the initiative was back on track. Y'all should look it up. It's pretty interesting. And since the beginning of her legal career and her career pre-Senate in government, she's focused as much of her time as possible on fighting for the safety, security, and enrichment of women, children, and the dismantling of sex trafficking organizations, which is one thing that makes me 100% confident that when she is VP, she is going to get to the bottom of this child sex trafficking problem in America and take care of business. And on top of that, during the debate, she made it very clear that her first day in the White House would consist of making sure that the ICE facilities that are separating women and children at the border and putting little babies in cages would be dismantled before breakfast of day one. I'm telling y'all, this woman's a bad bitch. Ain't nobody listen to me. I've been new. Anyway, in 2016, she was sworn in by then Vice President Joe Biden into the United States Senate, and she would become the third female U.S. Senator from California, and the second black female U.S. Senator, period, and the first South Asian U.S. Senator in history, period. And as a senator, she served on the Judiciary Committee, the Intelligence Committee, and the Budget and the Homeland Security Committees as well. And if I'm not mistaken, she's a member of the Black Congressional Caucus. Yeah? That sounds right. It's right. And now, of course, with Biden's decision to pick her as his running mate, she will become only the third female vice president candidate and the first black vice presidential candidate, if you exclude my soul brother, Frederick Douglass. And if you don't know who he is, he's from the late 1800s. He was the VP for the Equal Rights Party, and historians don't even think that counted, simply because they were never really even on the ballot. But regardless, she would still hold the title as the first female of color on a major party nomination ticket. And when they win, she would become the first female VP, the first black VP, and if something happens to Joe, knock on wood, she would become the second black president, the first female president, and the first female of color president. This woman doesn't know how to be the fourth at anything. Okay, now that I've given you a rundown of her background and title and stuff like that, I want to share with you where she stands on the issues. Because you can be the first this and the first that, and that's cool and all, but unless you stand clear in the sunlight on the issues, no one's going to trust you and no one's going to vote for you. And you could be the first piece of shit president we've ever had, but that title's already been taken. Trump. I was talking about Trump right there. Now, I'm going to give you some quick tidbits and then we're going to explain some shit at length in a second. I don't know if you know this, but organizations, nonprofits, political organizations, religious organizations, advocacy organizations, they like to rate candidates, political candidates, and I found Kamala's rating at all of the major ones, and she has a 100% rating by the Children's Defense Fund, the Human Rights Campaign. The Human Rights Campaign, HRC, is an LGBTQ rights campaign that fights for the civil rights of lesbians, gays, bisexual people, trans people, etc. She has a 100% score by HRC because whenever she was the Attorney General of California, she went after Prop 8, which California enacted as a ban on same-sex marriage. She decided that was unconstitutional, and she went after it like a fucking hound dog. And she was, a good part of it getting overturned. Not the only part, but she played a few cards in that game. She has a 93% rating by the American Civil Liberties Union. She has a 100% rating by the NAACP. She has a 100% rating by the National Organization of Police Organizations, which is funny if you think about it, because in this modern era, how are you going to have a 100% satisfaction rating by the NAACP and police organizations? Like, she's right in there. I'll explain why in a little bit. But for her to be so grounded in the fundamentals and the ethics of her job, what's right and what's wrong, and being able to teeter and side with the right party each time. Anyway, I just thought it was interesting. She's also got a 100% satisfaction rating from NARAL. I don't know how to pronounce that. I don't know how to say that. But it is a pro-choice group, kind of like Planned Parenthood, which she also received a 100% rating by. She has a 100% rating by the National Education Association and a 7% rating by the NRA. She is pro-union, pro-small business, anti-death penalty. She is pro-post office, which Trump is trying to get rid of and cripple and make so slow that mail-in voting sounds completely bonkers. Because he is trying to persuade this election in his favor, he knows he's going to lose. And if we all go to mail-in voting, the only thing that stands in his way of staying in office are going to be all of the postal mail carriers who pick up these ballots and will take them to go get counted. Trump has decided if he can find a way to cripple that system and to either privatize it or regulate the shit out of it so that it's so slow we have mailing backups, he could easily affect the outcome of our election. So we all need to pay attention to that. Anyway, she's also fought on the side of the EPA and environmental health initiatives against oil and gas companies, and she's won. Now let's get in a little deeper on some of these topics. Civil Liberties Union, she got a 93%. I'm not entirely sure what that is all about, but as a prosecutor and as the DA for the city of San Francisco, like I said earlier, all of her energy was used to fight injustices against women, against children, against victims of sexual assault, sexual violence, and sex trafficking. Now, she was tough on crime, which critics will say often led to her disparaging African Americans in the community. I'm not saying that she doesn't have any downfalls. That is something she will have to answer to voters to. However, for every case that she closed on an African American, she created an initiative for the specific kind of case that this person had gone through, that to rise out of that situation and circumstance. So, if she closed the book on somebody because they were nonviolent and first-time drug user who had a little bit of weed and shouldn't have been sent away for the mandatory sentencing, she created Back on Track, which is an initiative that got nonviolent first-time offenders to plead guilty because they committed a crime at the time. Whether I personally believe that marijuana should be illegal or not is not what I'm discussing here. I'm just discussing the facts of this case. Back then, it was illegal to have marijuana, so all of these nonviolent first-time drug offense cases would get brought in court. She would have them plead guilty because at the time they'd committed a crime. And then in order for it to get taken off their record, she would have them go to like some sort of program. Let's say at the courthouse. She would have them go to the courthouse and sign up for a program that would give them access to all kinds of tools. Tools that would allow them to get better educational opportunities and job trainings, so that way they could raise themselves out of the circumstances that really lend poorly towards social elevation and social class advancement. She saw an issue and she saw how our criminal justice system is broken, and she did something each time, and at each roadblock along the way, she found a way to fix that issue. LGBTQ rights. She was the Attorney General of California when Prop 8 was in the process of getting stricken down. California had decided to vote on a proposition that would ban same-sex marriage. Kamala Harris decided that that was unconstitutional. She worked within her government office and with the people that she had to work with to get Prop 8 overturned. She was not the only person with hands in that pie. She does not get all of the credit. But, like I said a second ago, she was a card in that game. So, if anything tells you about her stance on LGBT rights, that could be a good indication. Now, there is a specific case when she was a prosecutor where someone who was in prison and transgender was trying to get access to hormone medications and was denied when Kamala was a prosecutor, because Kamala had argued that although those hormones and medications were vital to the defendant's transitioning, not having those medications did not put that person in an immediate sense of physical danger. So the defendant's appeal to have her medications was kind of stricken down because of that. That is something she will have to answer for. That was years ago, before she was a senator, before she was an attorney general, before she was the vice president nominee, and I think that people should be allowed to evolve on issues. She obviously doesn't feel that way anymore because she's been an advocate for LGBT rights at every stop in the road along the way since. So, that is something she will have to answer to the gays for, and I'm all for that conversation. I'm just bringing you the facts. I don't think it was right, but I'm not sharing my bias on this situation. Obviously, y'all know that I'm very pro-transgender rights. I've dated transgender women. I've dated transgender men. I don't even see them as trans personally. I just see them as whatever gender they decide to identify as. It's not that hard, people. Here in town, actually, we were doing a school bond to get money borrowed by the city for our, facilities around town. And I had a conversation with the superintendent about making sure that at every new facility that was being built, we added a unisex family transgender restroom so that transgender people in our community would feel safe, and so that parents, for example, a mother taking her son to the restroom, or a father taking his daughter to the restroom, or anyone in between just needing to take a shit, had a safe place to do so without ridicule. And I remember the way I sold it to the superintendent by simply telling her, if men do not want them in the restroom, with us, and if women do not want them in the restroom with them, where are they supposed to shit? On the grass outside? Because I'm all for that too. And so I remember her immediately right then and there saying it wouldn't take anything to add a third restroom at all of these facilities that we are upgrading. Let me get in contact with the contractors, and let me get in contact with these people. And all it took for me to do that at all of the different facilities that were being renovated was for me to make an appointment and tell her. Anyway, this episode isn't about me. Sorry about that. As the Attorney General of the state of California, she opposed California's ban on affirmative action, and she asked the Supreme Court to reaffirm its decision that public colleges and universities should consider race as one of the factors in admission decisions. And that was important because, as you know, Obama signed in affirmative action so that African Americans would be given an equal shot and opportunity to get into colleges, jobs, etc., because they were being disenfranchised from enrollment, from being hired, and California was like, no, Mr. Black Guy, we're not doing that here in California. And Kamala said, guess what, bitch? Yes, we are. So your little ban on affirmative action, it's not gonna pass here. It's unconstitutional. We're rescinding that shit and all of that other good stuff. And I'm opposing this. Kamala Harris is opposed to the death penalty, and she co-sponsored a bill banning the death penalty, which personally, given certain situations, I'm very pro-death penalty because I don't want American tax dollars to be wasted for 50 years on a terrorist who blows up a building and kills a bunch of people when we could make a spectacle and public statement out of this person and hang him in the street. Okay, no, that's a little Norwellian. But I think it's, I don't know. I don't have any specific feeling towards the death penalty as long as we are sure that the people being executed have had all of the appeals that they can take. There is zero probability, zero chance, zero doubt in popular belief that this person could be innocent of the crime. So that way we're not executing innocent people. That's my only caveat to this argument. Now, the big one is marijuana. Everyone's asking about it. Everyone's talking about it. It's been brought up in the debates before. Kamala has sent people to jail for breaking the law when it came to marijuana crimes and the sales and the distribution and the possession of so. Now, she was the Attorney General. It was her job to uphold the law. At the time, the law was minimum sentencing for these people. Now, that is something she will have to answer for. Back then, she'd sent a good amount of people to jail for such issues. She did find a way or an initiative. She did create an initiative to get those people taken care of. If I'm not mistaken, she now does support it. In 2010, however, when she was campaigning to be the Attorney General, she opposed a proposition in California that would legalize recreational marijuana in California. In 2015, she evolved so much so that she called for an end on the federal prohibition of medicinal marijuana. Now, she's pro-decriminalization of marijuana. So, that's another one of those things she'll have to answer for. Of course, I believe that people should be allowed to evolve on topics and ideals and ideologies. Next. And in as early as 2018, Harris co-sponsored a Marijuana Justice Act that would have legalized cannabis at the federal level by removing it from the controlled substances schedule, and it would require that federal courts automatically expunge all of those convictions on people's records who dealt with that sort of situation, but it never really passed. And she did so because she felt as though this specific law and the criminalization of marijuana and the enforcement of those specific convictions disproportionately affected minorities and low-income individuals. And that was 2018 when she was just a senator, before the idea of running for president even crossed her fucking mind. She is pro-free college, but only if you independently make less than $125,000 a year. And then if you're a dependent, your family makes less than $125K a year. And she pays for it with her plan, saying that Wall Street would pay through a tax of 0.5% per stock trade. She also, because she is the child of two immigrants to this country, she has a lengthy record of support for dreamers and allowing them to stay here and allowing immigrants to come here legally and making it easier to legally come here and giving dreamers a pathway to citizenship. She is pro-campaign finance reform. In fact, one of the reasons that she had to drop out of the primaries to begin with, before the first state even cast its vote, is because her campaign didn't have the money to move forward. It was brought up at the debates that it was complete BS that one of the last surviving people of color in the race had to step down simply because she didn't have enough billionaires donating in wine cellars to her campaign. And she's right. All of those people on the debate stage after she dropped out were right. Money shouldn't be an issue, and it shouldn't be the reason that you aren't heard if you have an idea and a good platform and enough people are following you. It shouldn't be what gets in your way. Billionaires being able to buy support through candidates shouldn't be what drives this nation forward. And that's why she believes in campaign finance reform. She's also one of 10 senators to vote against NAFTA's replacement bill. And if you don't know what NAFTA is, it's the North American Free Trade Agreement between the United States, Mexico, and Canada. Anyway, recently we replaced that with the USMCA, and the reason she voted against, she said during the debates that she would have voted against NAFTA, and that she voted against the USMCA because it failed to address environmental impact and confront climate change related issues in relation to the new agreement. So she's environmentally aware. And I like that. In 2017, as a fresh junior senator from California, years before a presidential bid was even on the table or in her mind or the thought ever crossed her, she co-sponsored Bernie's Medicare for All bill. And that Medicare for All bill, as he said a million times during the debates, would move healthcare to a national Medicare-like system. And then later introduced a bill that would allow states to form a Medicaid buy-in program for all residents through the Affordable Care Act. And then with the rest of the Democrats and Susan Collins, I think that's her name, Susan, the one from Maine, the one from up there somewhere, and Senator John McCain, may he rest in peace, voted against stripping away and repealing the Affordable Care Act. So, when it comes to healthcare, she has a steady ideology and record on being for making sure that everyone in this country has access to affordable healthcare. I think that is one of the ways she just adds to Biden's initiative to make sure that we protect Obamacare and allow it to be improved and iron out the kinks. Because that bill's not perfect, but it makes a lot more sense to try and fix it, considering all the money that we spent and put into it, than to just repeal it cold turkey and then later think of a way to reintroduce a healthcare option, which is what the Republicans want to do. And that's not biased, that's the facts, and you can look it up. Now, I implore you to register to vote, and to vote with your conscience. In the same way that far alt-right social media organization and Russian bot sites spread fake information and false propagandized social media posts to try and sway uninformed voters away from the Democratic Party to try to assist Trump in 2016, they are going to do the same, and they are doing the same again in 2020 against Biden and Kamala. The Russians are not our allies. The destabilization of America is their number one goal and priority. I cannot stress that enough. They have attacked the integrity of our political system because there is nothing more polarizing in America than political ideology. Keep your eyes open. Double check your sources and get your news from somewhere other than Facebook, like this wonderful podcast, Ask Fonzie Anything, unless, of course, it's my personal Facebook page. And don't do it for me. Do it for the soul of this nation. I beg you to inform yourself and then to vote in November. Our nation will not survive another 4 years of the current administration. It just won't. This has been my first Thursday episode. I promise there will still be a scheduled episode on Monday. I will still be talking about my childhood traumas and abuse and where I've noticed the residual scars reflect on my life as an adult to this day. For this week's Fonzie's Wisdom of the Day, get involved. Pay attention. Engage yourself in the conversation and lean in. You have to be the change that you wish to see in this world. My government teacher in high school once shared a quote with me that said something to the effect of, one of the penalties intellectuals who do not involve themselves in politics face is that they are doomed to be governed by their inferiors. And she knew it would strike a chord with me. And so I'm sharing this with you all now in hopes that it strikes a chord with some of you too. Fonzie's Wisdom of the Day. With that being said, we've officially made it to the end of Ask Fonzie Anything. Thank you so much for sticking with me through this entire episode. If you want to hear more, I have tons of episodes posted already, and I'll post new episodes whenever I want. No, but seriously though, usually Mondays, and when the show starts growing, I'll start releasing episodes twice a week or something. If you like the show, it is available almost everywhere podcasts can be heard, including Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Make sure you add, like, subscribe, or follow me on my social media profiles. It's at Fonzie Graziano on everything, so you don't have to worry about missing an episode. Make sure and send me DMs to request episode discussion topics. You can write into me if you need advice. I've been told I'm an infinite spring of wisdom. I can definitely give you an outside perspective. I'll tell you what I would do anyway. And who knows, your letter might be the one I answer in the next episode. If you like, you can directly support the podcast. There are links in the bio to my Patreon and Anchor Direct. Or you can just buy one of my books. My first book, Glory, is available in print on Amazon.com and Walmart.com. The ebook is available on Kindle, and there is an audiobook available on Amazon, Audible, and iTunes.com, I think, but don't quote me on that. Also, my second book, Raindrops and Other Lullabies, which was originally due for release earlier this year, but it's been pushed back twice due to the coronavirus. It'll definitely be out before the end of the year, though. If you go to my website, not only can you download and read PDF previews of both books, but you can also listen to a sample of the audiobook of Glory, and if you sign up for the newsletter, you'll get an exclusive updates on what I'm working on, and promo codes, and sales, and discount info. And last but not least, I just want to remind y'all to be a rainbow in somebody's cloud, be kind to yourself and others, unless they talk to you crazy, and wash your fucking hands and wear your goddamn mask. I want to go to the bar. We'll get through this together. Thank you for listening. I think you're pretty cool. I don't care what they say about you. Bye. Now, in Monday's episode, I promise, I know I've said it 3 times already, but I promise in Monday's episode, we're going to talk all about my childhood trauma and abuse. All right, y'all come back now, you hear?